Jack Thompson had spent months planning this hunt, and now it was finally here. A seasoned outdoorsman with years of tracking and big game experience, he knew grizzly hunting in Alaska was nothing like any other expedition. This wasn't just sport, it was the ultimate test of skill, courage, and preparation. When Jack's small plane landed in Juneau, he looked out at the endless Alaskan wilderness, dense forests, snow-capped peaks, winding rivers. This was true grizzly country. After touching down, he collected his gear and headed to a local outfitter to meet his guide, Pete Miller. Pete was a rugged veteran of the Alaskan wild, his weathered face a map of decades spent outdoors. He greeted Jack with a firm handshake and a knowing nod. Over steaming coffee, the two spread out maps of the Chugach National Forest, reviewing their route and the prime areas for grizzly activity. Pete's knowledge of the region was encyclopedic, pointing out remote valleys and hidden salmon streams where the biggest bears roamed. Grizzlies aren't black bears or even Kodiaks, Pete warned in his low, steady voice. They're smarter, meaner, and they don't forgive mistakes. Out there, you stay alert every second. Jack nodded gravely, knowing the stories of hunters who had become prey in a blink. With a plan in place, they moved to Pete's 36-foot troller, a sturdy boat that doubled as a mobile base camp. Alongside it sat a smaller aluminum skiff for navigating shallow waters near their hunting grounds. As they loaded supplies, Pete ran through his final gear checks. High-powered rifles cleaned and oiled, ammo sealed in waterproof cases, emergency kits secured. "Got your bear tag?" Pete asked. Jack patted his pocket. 3 years to draw it, I'm not forgetting it now. Pete fired up the engine, and soon Juneau disappeared behind them as they motored up the long, fjord-like Lynn Canal into prime grizzly territory. Towering peaks rose on both sides, eagles circled overhead, and curious seals popped up from the water as the boat passed. That evening, with the sun dropping in a blaze of orange and pink, Pete guided the boat into a secluded bay where they would anchor overnight before heading up the Chilkat River at dawn. Over a hearty dinner of salmon and potatoes, Pete laid out the plan for the morning. Launch the skiff at first light, travel upriver a few miles, set up a base camp, and begin their hunt in some of the most untouched wilderness left on Earth. As night settled over the bay, Jack lay in his bunk listening to the gentle slap of waves against the hull. His mind raced with the coming adventure, tracking a massive grizzly, the heart-pounding moment of the shot, and the ever-present danger. But alongside the excitement was a deep respect for the bears and the wild places they called home. He knew this hunt wasn't just about a trophy. It was about testing himself against the ultimate wilderness challenge and reconnecting with a primal part of himself modern life had buried. Tomorrow, the real hunt would begin. The last thing they wanted was an unexpected visitor at midnight, searching for a late-night snack. That afternoon, they scouted around their camp. Pete pointed out signs of bear activity, overturned logs where bears had dug for larvae, and tufts of fur caught on tree bark. Tomorrow, they planned to venture deeper into the forest, based on what Pete had observed. There was likely at least one large grizzly in the area, their target. That evening, around the small campfire, Jack and Pete ate a simple dinner of dried food. Alone in the vast Alaskan wilderness, the two men felt the weight of the environment and the predator they sought. Shadows danced in the flickering light, the forest alive with invisible life. Pete shared tales of close encounters and successful hunts, keeping Jack both excited and alert. "A wounded grizzly is the most dangerous animal on this continent," Pete reminded him. "If you take a shot, make it count." Before going to sleep, they reviewed safety protocols. Their rifles were kept within reach, and each agreed to wake the other if a bear approached. Jack found it hard to sleep. Every forest sound a distant owl, rustling leaves. The trickle of the nearby stream magnified his anticipation. He felt awe for the wilderness and the perfect predator he would face. When dawn broke, Jack awoke instantly alert. Pete was already moving outside the tent, the clink of metal hinting he was preparing coffee. Jack dressed quickly, inhaling the crisp, pine-scented air. Over hot coffee, Pete outlined the day's plan: follow a trail deeper into the forest, investigate recent bear activity, and maintain vigilance for any sign of the grizzly. The two men packed up, loaded their rifles, and launched their skiff onto the glistening river. Pete expertly navigated shallow waters and rapids, pointing out fresh signs of bear activity, deep claw marks on trees, torn patches of soil, and scattered fur. Jack's excitement grew as he realized the hunt had truly begun. After 2 hours, Pete suddenly signaled for silence, pointing to a fresh pile of scat ahead. Jack's pulse quickened. The bear was near. They moved cautiously, each step deliberate to avoid unnecessary noise. Shadows among the trees grew more ominous. Then, a low, heavy breathing came from ahead. Jack and Pete froze, rifles ready. A massive shape emerged, a grizzly, its brown fur blending with the underbrush. Jack steadied his aim, finger on the trigger, but Pete shook his head gently. They needed a clear shot. The bear sniffed the air, oblivious to them. Jack could feel the weight of the moment. This was the predator he had come to challenge. Suddenly, rain began to pour, striking the forest canopy with a roar. The bear recoiled and disappeared into the brush. Pete cursed under his breath and signaled retreat. The hunters returned to camp, soaked despite their rain gear, but the setback was a lesson. In Alaska, patience and respect for the wilderness were as crucial as skill. That night, as the rain subsided, Jack lay awake, reflecting on the hunt and the raw challenge of the Alaskan wild. He knew tomorrow offered another chance. The forest sparkled with the remnants of rain, and every sense was heightened as he and Pete prepared to track the grizzly. The hunt was far from over, and Jack's resolve had never been stronger. They continued following the trail, and Jack couldn't shake an odd feeling that had been growing since leaving camp. Something about the forest today seemed different, quieter than usual, the rustling of small animals almost gone. Even Pete seemed to sense it, moving more cautiously, eyes scanning constantly as they ventured deeper. After an hour, Pete suddenly signaled Jack to stop, pointing silently at a fallen log about 20 feet ahead. Jack's eyes widened as he saw what caught Pete's attention, a footprint unlike anything he'd ever seen, twice the size of the bear tracks they'd been following. Its shape was unmistakably humanoid, but no human could leave such a print. "What the hell?" Jack whispered, astonished. Pete shook his head slowly, his expression revealing concern and confusion. "I've been in these woods for decades," he muttered, "but I've never seen anything like this." Jack immediately understood what Pete was referring to. Stories of a massive ape-like creature wandering the forests of North America for centuries. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Wendo. Each region had its own name for the legendary beast, though Jack had always dismissed such tales as folklore. Now, staring at the enormous tracks, he hesitated. Pete cut him off with a sharp gesture. Whatever this was, it was bigger and potentially far more dangerous than any bear they'd encountered. For a moment, silence hung over them, the weight of discovery pressing down. Jack gripped his rifle tighter, eyes darting to every shadow and movement in the forest. "What do we do?" he finally asked. Pete considered, then said, "We have two choices. Turn back now, report what we've found, or continue." A glint of excitement sparked in Pete's eyes despite the seriousness of the situation. "Let's see what this is. If we can't figure it out, it could be a discovery of a lifetime." Jack felt both fear and thrill. This went far beyond the grizzly hunt he had signed up for. The lure of possibly confirming one of the greatest zoological mysteries was irresistible. "Let's proceed," he said after a moment's thought, but with extreme caution. "This isn't a North American grizzly we're dealing with." Pete nodded, a grim smile crossing his face. They agreed to follow the giant tracks, but to retreat at the first sign of real danger. They traced the enormous footprints, spaced far apart, indicating a creature with a massive stride. Occasionally, they found other signs, bark stripped from trees far above a bear's reach, branches broken high overhead. Simple signs they had followed before now seemed to vanish, as if some immense predator sensed something even more fearsome and wisely chose to stay out of sight. Yet traces of this creature, footprints, and other evidence continued to lead them deeper into forest areas Pete rarely ventured. As the light faded, signaling evening, Pete ordered a stop. "We need to reach camp," he said quietly. They found a small clearing and set up a tent in silence, acutely aware of every sound around them. While eating a cold dinner, both men felt the forest tension. Jack finally asked the question that had haunted him all day. "Pete, do you really think we're tracking?" He trailed off. Pete stared into the deep darkness, finally whispering, "I've seen things most people wouldn't believe, but this is something else. If I had to bet, I'd say we're tracking a Sasquatch, a very large one." Jack nodded slowly, absorbing Pete's words. His mind wanted to dismiss it as impossible, but after everything he had seen, the evidence was undeniable. "What's our plan?" he asked. "We're not equipped for this," Pete chuckled softly. "No, we're not. We'll observe, take photos, maybe video if we can, but we don't engage. This isn't hunting anymore, it's exploration." They kept their rifles close, as the forest around them seemed alive, every snap of a branch sending adrenaline through their veins. Jack lay awake for hours, mind racing with thoughts of the next day. He had come to Alaska seeking the thrill of hunting one of nature's most dangerous predators, and now he was tracking something far more elusive and likely far more dangerous. As sleep finally claimed him, his dreams were filled with images of massive shapes moving through the trees, always just out of clear view. The next morning, the first light of dawn filtered through thick mist as Jack and Pete emerged from their tent. Both were tense, alert. The forest around them seemed charged with energy, every shadow and sound a potential threat. "We must be extremely careful today," Pete said as they quickly broke camp. "Whatever left those tracks yesterday is massive and intelligent. We are no longer the hunters, we are in its territory." Jack nodded, checking his rifle again, excitement mixed with unease. Following the giant tracks, they pressed deeper into the unknown, aware that each step could bring them face to face with a creature that would change everything they thought they knew about the wilderness. The creature vanished back into the forest, leaving Jack and Pete frozen in awe. It lingered for a few seconds before either could speak. Jack finally whispered, voice trembling, and Pete nodded slowly, pale-faced. "I saw it. Oh God, help me. A living Sasquatch." The realization hit them they had just confirmed the existence of a creature long relegated to myth and legend. The discovery alone could challenge the foundations of science's understanding of the natural world. Yet with that awareness came a sober thought. They were alone in the deep wilderness, far from help, tracking a powerful, unknown creature whose intentions they couldn't predict. "Have you ever imagined what we're going to do now?" Jack asked, still trying to process what he had seen. Pete was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing their options. Finally, his voice was firm but determined. "We have two choices. We can try to follow it, gather more photo or video evidence if we can, or we can leave while we still can." The part of Jack that had driven him on this expedition, the explorer, the thrill-seeker, wanted to pursue the creature, but his rational mind screamed at him to retreat to safety and report what they had seen. "I think we should follow it," Jack said. "We may never get another chance like this, but we'll be careful. At the first sign of real danger, we leave." Pete nodded, eyes wide with fear and excitement. "Agreed. No unnecessary risks. Our lives are worth more than any discovery." With that decision made, they began carefully tracking the enormous footprints left behind. The creature seemed unconcerned with hiding its path now, moving slowly but with all senses alert, ready to retreat at any moment. As dusk approached, signaling evening, they knew they would need to camp early. Spending a night in the territory of an unknown creature was unnerving, but moving through the forest in darkness seemed even less appealing. They found a small clearing and silently set up camp, both men acutely aware of every sound around them. Eating a cold dinner, they didn't dare make noise that could attract attention. Jack couldn't shake the sense that they had crossed a threshold. They were no longer just hunters or even explorers. They were witnesses to something extraordinary, something that could alter humanity's understanding of what exists in the wild. Jack felt a mix of fear and exhilaration at what the next day might bring. They were on the brink of a discovery that could make history, yet the wilderness had revealed one of its deepest secrets. Dawn broke, sunlight piercing the dense mist through the trees. Jack and Pete emerged from the tent, alert and tense after a night filled with strange sounds. The forest seemed charged with energy, every shadow and sound a potential threat. "We must move carefully today," Pete whispered, scanning their surroundings. "Whatever left those tracks yesterday is massive and intelligent. We are no longer the hunters, we are in its territory." Jack checked his rifle, excitement tempered by anxiety. Following the giant tracks, they ventured deeper into the unknown, aware that each step could bring them face to face with a creature that could change everything they thought they knew about the wilderness. As they progressed, the forest seemed to transform. Trees grew taller and wider, the underbrush thickened, and every sign of passage grew more dramatic: broken branches, uprooted ferns, and deeply gouged earth. Jack shivered, realizing the predator they were tracking was becoming increasingly formidable. The usual sounds of birds and small animals had nearly vanished, as if the entire ecosystem were holding its breath in awareness of a great predator. Suddenly, Pete signaled Jack to stop, pointing toward a thinning in the trees. Ahead lay the edge of a large clearing, hundreds of feet wide, surrounded by towering trees leaning inward like a natural arena. Scattered across the clearing were strange structures made from fallen logs, some resembling crude teepees, others more complex makeshift shelters. The vegetation had been torn and disturbed, and Jack's breath caught in his throat at the sight. Then came a low, guttural roar, unlike anything they had ever heard. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, reverberating through the trees, shaking them to the core. Instinctively, both men raised their rifles, scanning the clearing. The roar grew closer, accompanied by snapping branches. Something massive was moving through the underbrush toward them. Pete hissed, retreating toward a nearby pile of fallen logs. They pulled back quickly and quietly, using the natural cover as best they could, hearts racing, palms sweating on their rifle stocks. The forest fell silent again. Through a gap in the logs, Jack finally saw it. A massive, dark-furred figure towering over 8 feet on its hind legs, arms almost reaching its knees, ending in hands with long, curved claws. Its cone-shaped head rested directly on broad shoulders, with no visible neck. The Sasquatch moved with surprising grace for its size, gliding toward one of the makeshift structures. Reaching it, it bent down and pulled out what looked like a roughly woven fabric or basket made from flexible branches. Jack and Pete watched in stunned silence as the creature methodically moved through the clearing, pausing to dig in the soil and gather vegetation, clearly engaging in purposeful foraging behavior. Jack slowly and silently retrieved his camera, hands trembling, snapping photos evidence they could no longer deny. Each click sounded loud in the tense silence, yet the creature seemed oblivious to their presence. After what felt like hours, though likely only 20 minutes, the Sasquatch finished its task and slipped quietly back into the forest, vanishing as silently as it had appeared. It took Jack and Pete a long moment to move or speak. "Did that just happen?" Jack finally whispered. Pete nodded slowly, face pale. "It did. We just saw a living Sasquatch, and we saw it use tools to forage." Reality sank in. They had confirmed the existence of a creature pushed into myth and legend, a discovery that could shake the foundations of what science thought it knew about the natural world. The rational part of their minds screamed to retreat to safety and report the sighting, but the explorer inside them longed to pursue the creature further. They began carefully making their way back through the forest, following the giant tracks as best they could. Every snapped branch and rustling leaf kept their nerves on edge. Every turn, Jack half expected to see the massive Sasquatch emerge from behind a tree. Somehow, they made it back to their original camp, hearts pounding, minds racing, forever changed by what they had witnessed. With their gear packed and ready for the long trek back to civilization, Jack felt a mix of emotions: the thrill of hunting one of nature's most dangerous predators, and the awe of having witnessed something extraordinary. They had encountered a mystery that had eluded science for centuries, perhaps forever altering the understanding of the natural world. As they hoisted their backpacks and began the journey back, Jack felt a profound humility. Venturing into the deepest wilderness and encountering something beyond comprehension reminded them that the world still held wonders and unanswered mysteries. Both men knew life would never be the same after this. Moving quietly through the dense Alaskan forest, every broken branch and rustling leaf sent adrenaline racing through their veins. Their minds conjured images of the massive Sasquatch they had seen, the forest around them seeming thicker, the branches weaving together to block the light. The air grew heavy, thick with an unidentifiable musky scent that set their nerves on edge. Pete whispered, scanning the surroundings. "Something's different here. It's like the forest itself is closing in." Jack nodded, gripping his rifle tighter. The usual sounds of the forest had vanished, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed in from every side. Hours of hiking, heavy packs, and constant vigilance wore on them, but their caution paid off. Suddenly, Pete signaled Jack to stop. Through the trees, a massive dark figure appeared, moving with surprising grace, a Sasquatch, or perhaps another of its kind, heading straight for them. Its size dwarfed them, muscles covered in thick, dark fur, eyes sharp and intelligent. For a moment, it paused, sniffing the air, meeting Jack's gaze. The creature's low, bone-rattling roar reverberated through the forest, part animal, part something almost human, and sent shivers down their spines. In a desperate scramble, Pete and Jack dove into a narrow hollow under a fallen tree, pressed against the cool rock, hearts pounding. The Sasquatch loomed near the entrance, sniffing, its massive hands scraping against the stone, then slowly moving away. Its heavy footsteps faded, and the forest fell silent again. Only with the first light of dawn did they dare to move, emerging from their cramped refuge into the dim morning light. The forest seemed calmer, but the danger was still real. They were deep in Sasquatch territory with limited supplies and no clear escape. Pete whispered, "We need to keep moving east toward the river. It's our best chance to get out of here." Jack, exhausted and wary, nodded. Every sound, every shadow kept them alert as they slowly navigated the uneven, wet terrain. By late afternoon, the roar of the river signaled relief. The rushing water revived them despite exhaustion. They reached the bank of a wide, fast-flowing river. Jack knelt, drank deeply from the cold stream, feeling the chill soothe his parched throat. When he lifted his head, he froze. Across the river stood a Sasquatch, watching them. Its deep, intelligent eyes met his for a long, silent moment. Fear did not grip Jack. Instead, it was awe, a reminder of a creature that had lived alongside humanity for centuries, hidden in the wildest corners of the world. The Sasquatch vanished into the forest, leaving Jack and Pete alone on the riverbank. Jack whispered, his voice trembling with awe. Pete slowly nodded. "I saw it, and I think it's been watching us all along. Maybe it led us here, to the river." The idea was astonishing, yet Jack couldn't ignore the creature's intelligence. Its behavior revealed a complexity they had never imagined. Following the river downstream, they hoped it would guide them back to civilization. Jack knew that no matter what happened next, he was forever changed. The Alaskan wilderness was wilder, more mysterious, and somewhere out there, an ancient species thrived along the river, a testament to nature's enduring secrets. Their tired legs found new strength as the river led them forward. The dense forest along the bank seemed to watch their progress, ancient wisdom echoing through the trees. Thoughts of the past days replayed in Jack's mind. What began as a simple hunt had turned into something beyond his wildest imagination. The encounter with not just one, but an entire Sasquatch family had shaken him to his core, a discovery that could change everything if only they could survive to tell the story. "We need to be careful," Pete broke the silence. "The river is a good guide, but it's also a highway for wildlife, bears, moose, who knows what else." Jack tightened his grip on his rifle. Every sound of rushing water was a reminder of both guidance and danger. Life was slowly returning to the forest, birds calling, small animals rustling as if the wilderness was reclaiming its balance after their passage. By late afternoon, the river widened, the forest thinned, and light began to filter through the canopy. Pete signaled Jack to stop. Ahead, they noticed large, fresh tracks. Not the Sasquatch's, but giant grizzly tracks. Relief and tension mingled in Jack's chest, a reminder that even now, in this safer wilderness, the unknown still ruled. As dusk fell, they reached a flat area along the riverbank, ideal for camping. They quickly set up a basic camp, collected firewood, and built a small fire. Jack felt a strange sense of normalcy as the flames flickered, the river's roar beside them, sharing the last emergency rations. The events of the past days felt almost dreamlike, yet every detail, the enormous fur, intelligent eyes, complex social behavior, lingered vividly in their minds. Sitting quietly by the fire, Jack finally spoke. "What do we do with what we've seen?" Pete was silent for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I've thought a lot about it," he said finally. "On one hand, what we've found is proof of a species turned legend, something that could change science forever. But on the other hand, if the world knew, its habitat would be overrun by scientists, tourists, hunters. There's a reason it's remained hidden." Jack nodded slowly, understanding Pete's dilemma. The weight of their discovery was immense, as was the responsibility that came with it. "Maybe the world isn't ready for this," he said softly. "Maybe the best thing we can do is protect its secret." Pete looked at Jack, a silent understanding passing between them. What they had experienced would remain their secret, a wilderness mystery untouched by human hands. As the fire died down, Jack's thoughts drifted back to the riverbank encounter, the moment the Sasquatch had watched them. There was wisdom in its eyes, ancient knowledge, a fleeting recognition between two worlds before it returned to its domain. The next morning, under a clear blue sky, they broke camp and followed the river. The forest gradually opened, light filtering through the thinning trees. Suddenly, they heard an unmistakable sound of an engine in the distance. Heart racing, they ran toward it, reaching a winding riverside road where a logging truck approached. Pete waved, and the truck slowed and stopped. The driver, wide-eyed, helped them aboard. Relief washed over Jack and Pete as they returned to the world they knew. Pete was silent for a long moment, pushing food around on his plate before finally speaking. "The weight of this secret is heavy," he said. "We'll stick to the story we told the rangers. Lost hikers? Encounters with wildlife? Nothing more." Jack nodded slowly, reaching the same conclusion, but hearing Pete's voice, it made it feel real, decisive, almost unsettling. "What about the implications for science, for our understanding of evolution?" Jack asked. He knew Pete was thinking the same thing. "If we told the truth," Jack continued, "the forest would be swarmed within days by scientists, thrill seekers, and hunters. We'd destroy what we found." Pete nodded silently. He had glimpsed the Sasquatch family, the children playing under the watchful eyes of the adults, and Jack understood. This was their home, their private world. The two men fell into quiet reflection. A waitress poured coffee, eyeing their disheveled appearance with curiosity, but said nothing. "I've guided in these woods over 20 years, Pete murmured after a while, "and I thought I knew them like the back of my hand. But now, I realize I know nothing." Jack chuckled softly, wondering what other secrets the wilderness might hold. After finishing their meal and returning to their lodge, Jack looked at the town with new eyes. Buildings, cars, streetlights, all the trivialities of human civilization seemed smaller, less important against what they had witnessed in the night forest. Lying in bed, Jack's mind raced with questions. How long had the Sasquatch lived here? How had it remained hidden? What was its place in the evolutionary tree? Perhaps they would never know, not in his lifetime. The next morning brought practical concerns. They arranged transport back to Juneau. At the small airstrip, Jack's eyes scanned the distant trees, half expecting to see a large, furry figure still watching. The short, bumpy flight back felt surreal after everything on the ground. In Juneau, they shared a firm handshake, an unspoken understanding. What they had experienced would bond them forever, a secret that could never be fully expressed. On the flight home to the lower 48, Jack felt a profound sense of loss, not just for the wilderness they left behind, but for the hidden world they had witnessed. Alaska had changed him. Returning to everyday life felt artificial. Office work, traffic, smartphones, social media. He spent more time outdoors, exploring local parks, always scanning the trees, wondering what might still lurk unseen. Jack looked at his photos and videos differently now. Grainy footage and blurry images no longer seemed meaningless. He knew what they truly depicted. Over the months, the intensity of the experience faded, but its impact remained. Jack became a passionate advocate for wilderness conservation, opposing development that threatened pristine forests. He understood that every lost acre meant not only lost trees and wildlife, but lost mysteries. Nearly a year later, Jack received a package in the mail from Pete. Inside was a photograph, a stunning Alaskan forest with a winding river, and at the edge, a shadowy, massive figure disappearing into the trees. The note simply read, "Some mysteries are meant to be kept. Handle with care, old friend." Jack stared at the image, knowing that for most it would look like just another blurry photo, but he knew what it meant. Somewhere in the vast wilderness, ancient creatures lived on, hidden from the modern world. He returned the photo to his drawer, a private reminder of the extraordinary experience he had been part of. He would never share it with anyone yet on quiet nights. It was enough to take it out, remember standing face to face with a legend, and reflect on how little humanity truly knows about the world. Jack smiled to himself. The world was wilder, more marvelous than most people realized, and he was one of the few lucky enough to glimpse its hidden wonders. The knowledge he carried from Alaska was more valuable than any trophy or photograph, a private reminder that some mysteries are meant to be respected, not conquered.